This unassuming image first appeared on the depths of 4chan's MLP board, a space dedicated to discussions of My Little Pony. At first glance, it seems like an innocent, if slightly eccentric, display of fandom. When the poster, identifying as a neo-pagan, shared the photo with a cryptic caption, it sparked a mix of fascination and ridicule from the image board. However, no one could have predicted the events that would follow. Fast forward just a few months, and this seemingly harmless image would be tied to a chilling sequence of events in the college town of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. It began innocuously enough. Reports of strange gatherings in local parks and unexplainable noises late at night. But as the community dug deeper, what they uncovered was far darker than anyone expected. And at the center of it all, this very altar. The altar in question belonged to Gregory Whitman, a now 28-year-old Murfreesboro resident who openly identified as a diabolist. Those who knew Whitman would say he never quite fit into any friend groups in his adolescence, leaving him to fill his social needs on the internet, particularly on 4chan, where he gained an interest in the occult thanks to interaction on the paranormal board X. Also, having been 14 years old when the first episode of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic started airing, he was a known fan of the cartoon throughout its entire running. He enrolled in Middle Tennessee State University in 2014, where he was known around campus as an outspoken advocate for the dark arts, frequently getting into arguments and debates with campus evangelists. And it wasn't just Christians he taunted. Whether it was a Christian campus ministry or a Muslim, Jewish, or New Age table set up at the university commons, no religious group was spared from his vitriol. Not only was he an active participant and club officer in MTSU's Brony Club, Gregory also founded the university's Satanic Student Alliance. Because both clubs were affiliated with him, they would later be disbanded as a result of his controversy. As of today, no replacements have been established. Our story begins on July 10th, 2024, when Gregory posted the anonymous photo to the MLP board with the subject, Marble Pie, My Guide Through the Veil. It read, "Behold, my humble offering. For her guidance, I give thanks. Marble Pie, quiet muse and keeper of secrets, has shown me the path. Through her, I have found clarity in the noise and purpose where none existed. The veil between worlds grows thinner. With her guidance, I will see it torn. Her wisdom calls me to action, and her silence speaks volumes. Mock if you will, but the truth lies within her stillness. To those who understand, know this, the time is near. May her presence guide you as it has me." When faced with ridicule, Gregory remained unfazed, often replying with cryptic retorts that only fueled the thread's eerie undertone. For example,
Anon, you're being spiritually attacked by a demon masquerading as your waifu. Look at what you typed. Look at what you done. Idolatry, divination, witchcraft, and blasphemy. This is not what normal God-respecting people do. Please pray to Christ, so he can banish this unclean spirit back to whence it came.
"Mock if you must. The laughter of the uninitiated is the wind that fans the flames of awakening." Gregory's tone shifted dramatically when engaging with those who expressed genuine curiosity, responding with elaborate, almost sermon-like explanations in an attempt to draw others into his peculiar worldview.
Are you being serious or are you LARPing? It'd be nice if you'd elaborate. I've had the same kinds of thoughts about my waifu before.
Her silence is her strength. Marble does not speak loudly like others. She listens, she observes, She knows. The loud voices distract, but the quiet one leads. It is in her stillness that the answers dwell.
Go on.
The veil separates the false world you know from the truth beyond. Marble Pie is not just a character. She is an archetype, a reflection of the quiet wisdom that can guide one through the illusion. Thanks to her, the veil thins and the path is revealed. Our story takes a strange and unsettling turn on the evening of Wednesday, July 17, 2024, exactly 1 week after the initial 4chan post. Gregory Whitman arrived unannounced at St. Elizabeth Antiochian Orthodox Church for a midweek Akathist service. He was dropped off 2 hours before the service by an all-black van with tinted windows and disturbing decals, including cryptic phrases in Latin and symbols that defied easy interpretation. Witnesses later described the van as lingering nearby for several minutes before disappearing into the night. As the church had few pews, Gregory stood silently near the back wall, his presence noticed but not unwelcome among the small congregation. He observed the silence with an intensity that some found disquieting, his lips moving as if silently echoing the prayers. But it was after the Akathist concluded that the true oddity of the evening began to unfold. Following the service, Gregory approached Boris Ivanov, a choir member and longtime parishioner at St. Elizabeth. Boris would later recount how Gregory introduced himself as a visitor interested in orthodoxy, speaking with a mix of charm and peculiar fervor. Gregory mentioned that he had no transportation home and persuaded Boris to give him a ride. Grateful for the opportunity to help a stranger, Boris agreed, unaware of the unnerving conversation that would soon follow. During the drive, Gregory's demeanor shifted. What began as polite conversation about the church quickly spiraled into a fervent monologue about My Little Pony, Marble Pie, and the deeper spiritual truths he claimed the show revealed. Boris described how Gregory's tone grew increasingly obsessive, mixing detailed anecdotes about the character with cryptic statements about the veil of reality and breaking free. As the conversation continued, Gregory mentioned his plans to go camping, repeating the phrase with an eerie emphasis that left Boris deeply unsettled. As the conversation continued, the undertones became harder for Boris to ignore. Gregory's references to camping had shifted to detailed descriptions of his so-called preparations, lists of tools, rituals, and obscure references to tearing the veil. Despite his unease, Boris wanted to help Gregory, convinced that his strange behavior might stem from loneliness or mental distress. Hoping to gain clarity, Boris parked his truck in the empty lot of an office depot, telling himself that a little more patience might shed light on the situation. Gregory stepped out of the truck, claiming he needed to reflect on his work. As he paced back and forth, muttering under his breath, Boris remained inside, consumed by a growing sense of dread. Reaching for his prayer rope, Boris began reciting the Jesus prayer aloud. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. He called a trusted friend, Evan Walker, explaining the situation in hushed tones and asking for his assistance. All the while, he could feel Gregory's piercing gaze through the windshield. When Gregory re-entered the truck, his expression had shifted, his calm demeanor replaced by agitation. Without warning, he shouted at Boris, "Stop praying!" Boris, stunned but resolute, refused to stop. What began as an awkward tension quickly escalated into a heated exchange, with Gregory accusing Boris of invoking barriers and interfering with the energies at work. Boris, clutching his cross, told Gregory firmly that he needed help and that this behavior wasn't normal. Before the argument could spiral further, Boris's friend Evan arrived, parking his car directly behind Boris's truck. Stepping out, Evan shouted at Gregory, "Get out of the truck now, or I'm calling the police." The sudden intrusion seemed to snap Gregory out of his tirade. Looking between Boris and Evan, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Without another word, he stepped out of the truck, walking away from the parking lot into the darkness, where he presumably found another ride home. The events of that night had a ripple effect on everyone involved. For Gregory, the confrontation marked the beginning of a downward spiral. After leaving the Office Depot lot, he disappeared from the public eye for several weeks, later resurfacing with increasingly erratic behavior that worried those who knew him. Boris, shaken but unharmed, shared the experience with his priest and congregation, who offered prayers for both him and Gregory. Meanwhile, Evan contacted local authorities, but left upset after being told the police couldn't do much in the meantime. News of the encounter quickly spread through St. Elizabeth's community. While many were grateful for Boris's composure and Evan's intervention, others expressed deep concern over Gregory's intentions. While the church remembered Gregory in their prayers, asking for his healing, the event also led to renewed discussions among parishioners about vigilance and safety, and several men in the parish were given a special protocol to follow should Gregory show up again, as a plan to protect the vulnerable in the church, such as elderly and children. After the incident at St. Elizabeth Orthodox Church, Gregory Whitman retreated to the shadows of Barfield Crescent Park. The details of his activities remained obscure at first, but as strange happenings began to ripple through Murfreesboro, a chilling picture emerged. Gregory wasn't merely performing rituals to pierce the veil. He believed he was summoning someone, his wife, Marble Pie. In his writings and online posts, Gregory spoke of Marble Pie not just as a character from My Little Pony, but as a real spiritual being, a muse, a guardian angel, a wife separated from him by the fabric of reality itself. According to his journal, she had been trapped in the veil, and it was his destiny to bring her across into this world. What began as a solitary obsession grew into something far more disturbing as Gregory sought others to join him in his so-called summoning rites. I was fortunate enough to have spoken to an anonymous participant in his rituals who had this to say about them.
I've been in the esoteric scene for a while, and Greg's rituals were far from the weirdest thing I've been a part of. I've seen objects move, felt presences, summoned actual entities, gods, angels. When he reached out, I knew he believed in what he was doing. I respected that. When I showed up to Barfield Crescent Park, it was out of curiosity. But he wasn't messing around. He was organized, calm, and clear about his intentions. The Marble Pie plushie was unique, but it wasn't out of place. And no surprise, a lot of us there had seen the show, so it felt almost like a communal experiment rather than a ceremony. Greg's commitment kept us coming back. Week after week, he'd lead the same chants, the same rituals, with this growing certainty that he was getting closer to something. He never demanded money or control. He just wanted people to help him connect with something he believed in. The air would always feel heavier during the rituals, like the woods were holding their breath. He would whisper to that plushie and hold it close to him like it was alive. For him, this was a love story. I don't regret it at all. We pretty much just liked the idea of turning something from a kid's cartoon into a metaphysical experiment. I even went to Mayor Fair a month later, and they had a panel on pony tulpas. Greg would have fit right in.
For Gregory and those who joined him, the ritual was more than an act of obsession. It was an exploration of belief, intent, and the unknown. In the quiet woods of Barfield Crescent Park, a small group of people gathered to celebrate the end result of their spiritual but not religious lifestyle. Their praxis brought them closer to the edge of what might be possible, even if only in their own twisted minds. Throughout late July and early August, Gregory held secret gatherings deep in the woods. Around that time, many pets were also reported missing in the Murfreesboro area. Witnesses reported seeing groups of people dressed in dark clothing, carrying lanterns, and chanting in an unrecognizable language. At the center of these gatherings was Gregory himself, presiding over a ritual he claimed would anchor Marble Pie's essence to this world. He spoke of opening a gateway, of pulling her through. An eyewitness later testified.
My wife and I were walking the trails when we heard this awful sound, like howling. It was rhythmic, almost like it had a pattern. We saw the glow of their lanterns in the trees, and then we heard someone shouting. It sounded desperate, like a man begging for something. I told her we had to leave. Whatever they were doing out there, I didn't want to find out.
When word of Gregory's activity spread, the Orthodox community at St. Elizabeth reacted with a mix of horror and sorrow, having been instructed of the events by Boris and Evan. Many recalled his unsettling visit weeks earlier, and now his words about crossing the veil carried a more sinister weight. The church held a special service to pray for Gregory's soul and for protection against the spiritual forces he might have invoked. Gregory's gatherings culminated in a final, chaotic night on August 16th. Witnesses reported seeing flashing lights in the woods and hearing what sounded like screams. When rangers arrived, the site was abandoned, but they found the remnants of Gregory's rituals: scorched grass, sigils carved into tree trunks, a marble pie plushie torn apart, and worst of all, weeks' worth of spilled blood. DNA testing connected the blood to the animals that had gone missing over the past few weeks, and their owners were heartbroken. Among the items recovered were fragments of a journal containing Whitman's detailed plans, strewn about as if hoping an outsider would find them. One passage read, "She is close. I feel her watching me. The veil weakens with every gathering. Soon, my marble will stand at my side, and I will be made whole." As of today, Gregory's whereabouts are unknown, and local PD remains passively investigating. Regardless, Gregory Whitman's story is one of obsession taken to its most dangerous extreme. What began as a fascination with a fictional character became a consuming delusion that drew others into its orbit.